This is your place for all things Grand Rapids Griffins and all things Toledo Walleye. This is the Hockeytown West Podcast with your host, Brandon Cook and Nick Harrington.
Welcome to the Hockeytown West Podcast, your source for everything Toledo Walleye and Grand Rapids Griffins hockey. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon.
I'm Travis.
And today we are joined by a special guest, one we've kind of wanted to get on here for a while, and we're glad we finally could. We are joined by Mr. Mark Monroe from the Toledo Blade. For those that don't know Mark Monroe, he's been with the Toledo Blade now for, 25 years, Mark?
25 years, just this February, yep. And whole time pretty much covering ECHL hockey. So thanks for having me on, guys. I really enjoy the podcast.
Yeah. We appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a Friday night, and I'm sure, I don't know if the weather is as nice down there as it is up here in Grand Rapids, but I'm sure you want to get back to enjoying your night. So we appreciate you doing this a lot. So before we jump in, Mark, some questions for you before we talk about the season, because this episode will be focused more on recapping the Toledo Walleye season, kind of wrapping it up, putting a bow on it, and getting started with our off-season activities. But before we jump into that, tell the folks a little bit about yourself outside of, being with the Toledo Blade for 25 years. You've covered the ECHL for 16 years now. Just kind of give us a quick rundown just about you.
Yeah, I'm born and bred here in Northwest Ohio. Grew up at the old sports arena. Even going back to Gold Diggers, that's how old I am. We're talking 70s, always had the hockey bug. Hockey's always been big, and I read the Toledo Blade and the coverage of the Storm and the Gold Diggers, and I thought, well, someday that would be great. And really, it's a dream come true. I went to Kent State and got a degree in magazine journalism, and came back home and started working right away for a weekly paper, and caught on at the Blade here, the Toledo Blade, in '99, and shortly thereafter was put on the Toledo Storm beat, and It's been great. Mostly I cover high school sports when I'm not covering hockey. So it's really enjoyed it. Just the people in this area. And then, as Travis knows, the hockey, it's just a true hockey town. There's no better hockey town in the ECHL anyway than Toledo. I've been all over the place now to other arenas, especially for the playoffs, and the crowds just don't compare. So it's really special. And the Walleye organization is really taking it to a next level. And I know we'll be breaking down the season here, but they've just put together a phenomenal run the last 4 or 5 years, where they've gone to the finals twice and the conference finals 4 times. And it's been a pleasure. And of course, the only thing that's missing is that elusive Kelly Cup. And maybe this was the year, but just to circle back around. Worked for the local paper now for 25 years, and one day they're going to win the cup here. That I can promise you.
So you almost followed your dreams, almost essentially. I
always liked writing. To be honest with you, I didn't know I was going to get into journalism until pretty well into my college career. But I've always loved sports and always liked writing, and the two have meshed, and it's worked out well, guys.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good storyline there. And you even were a co-writer on a book, I understand, right?
Yeah, it's right behind me on the shelf here. Hockey Night in Toledo. We wanted to call it Hit Somebody, as Travis knows.
Was that trademarked?
Well, it was just, I don't know. We have some more sensitive or sensible people that put the book out. I think it would have maybe sold better. But yeah, it was this was now before the Walleye franchisee had even started. So we put it out in between the end of the Storm. So around 2008, the Walleye were founded in 2009. So we kind of recapped the entire history of Toledo hockey, which goes back to the 40s. Starting out with the Babcocks and the Blades, and everybody knows the Gold Diggers, and this minor league city to get in that book, we cover all the championships that the city has celebrated, and it's 11. So it's not like we've never won anything. It's just been since 1994. So, I'd encourage people to pick it up if they're interested in the history of hockey in Toledo.
It's always crazy when I talk to friends and family up here in Grand Rapids that don't understand the true depths of hockey like we do. And, I talk about the popularity of this team with the Walleye right now. And I'm like, guys, it goes way back. It goes way, way back. In Grand Rapids, it's just you had the Owls for a brief period of time before the Griffins, and then you had the Griffins in '96. But in Toledo, years and years of wildly successful organizations. And to me, Toledo Walleye is just another successful organization. Like you said, they're just missing the cup, but it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, just the old school days. I'm sure we've all seen Slapshot, but I mean, that's how it was back at the sports arena. Again, the last 2 years of the Storm, I was covered them, and just that arena was so special. There's a couple that are still like that, like down in Wheeling, but it was so small, and the crowds and the style of hockey they used to play here was that physical brand, lots of fights. I mean, it was the wild times, and people, there's a certain segment, the east side of Toledo, those guys really still miss that brand of hockey. Now, hockey's changed considerably in recent years, at least 10 years now, where it's more the physical, fast-paced style, which I actually favor, but I think there's still room for some of that old school stuff.
I can remember going there, and like the scoreboard was the old bulbs, even at the end. It was a special place, and I didn't get to experience it for that many years. I was pretty little, but to what they're in now, it's like almost night and day.
Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to go back. Let's just put it that way. Huntington Center, even though now we're in year 15, it's still a beautiful facility, and I have the best seat in the house every night.
I'm envious of that seat. It's a nice seat, and it is a beautiful arena. It's one of the nicest ones I've been in, and I've been in quite a few hockey ones myself. Even at the NHL level, the Huntington Center is still a very nice arena. So, but let's jump into this recap a little bit. But I guess before we jump into the recap, there's already been some roster changes that some of us saw coming, and some of us didn't really expect when you talk about the Toledo Walleye. Mark, you shared a piece on this the other day. We've already seen the departure of John Lethaman, which was it's a tearjerker for us Walleye fans. I mean, he's such a well and respected goaltender in this organization. He's put on a show for this team for the last few years, but he's also been joined now by Riley Sawchuk, Riley McCourt, Michael Prapavesis. Am I missing anyone?
Wilms and Gilmore.
Those are the guys that were announced just recently. And Jason Wilms, the other young rookie they got out of the college Canadian ranks there. But I think the biggest surprise is Sawchuk. I just really thought right with the season he had, and then the playoffs, he was the best player on the ice. Either team for many games, and I was a little surprised Grand Rapids, didn't offer him a contract. Maybe you guys have more insight on that, but they came down and looked at him enough. I thought for sure that they would lock him up, but the allure of the money over in the European leagues, you can't blame a guy like that to strike while the iron's hot and go over there and get a paycheck. But man, that kid, I thought he had the biggest upside of anybody on the team. Sawchuk is a big hole that they're going to have to replace in that lineup. And back to Leth, not to gloss over him because he was one of my favorite goalies to ever come through here. He's just a great guy to work with, win or lose, just always willing to chat, and established a really good rapport with him. And I tell you what, this may sound cliche or whatever, but nobody worked harder than John Lethaman, and nobody wanted to win that cup as much as he did. I saw it firsthand, what it meant to him. And after that last game that didn't go so well, he still, you could just tell how much it hurt him. But again, can't blame a guy who's going to play over in Finland. It seems like a good fit for him over there. And again, he'll cash in financially too.
It's no small league either. I'm pretty sure it's the Swedish Elite League.
Yeah, Liga. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It makes sense to go cash in while you're in your prime and showing off the skills that you're showing off right now and putting up the results they've put up. I respect it fully, but I am sad to see both of them go. And to Riley, it's shocking the Griffins didn't sign him. I wish I had more insight on that, but I don't understand, but he had one heck of a season. He came into Grand Rapids late last season, mid-year signing. It was just an instant boost of energy to a Griffins team that really struggled. And seeing him go to Toledo this year and seeing what he was able to do in his first full pro season, it was shocking. Not that we didn't know he had it in him, but holy smokes, did he really have it in him. So it is a big hole to fill. I'll be curious to watch the offseason moves. When we talk, being a small minor league podcast, we go, man, what are we going to talk about in the summer? And Travis was like, don't worry, Toledo roster movement happens fast and all throughout the summer. And he was not kidding.
Yes, that's exactly right. And just to put a finishing touch on the guys at all, Riley McCourt, I think you mentioned him, and Michael Prapavessis on the back end, 2 defensemen. McCourt was the power play guy, led him in points, and he's going to be a big loss. And Prapavessis, good plus minus guy, just steady D man. Those are 2 guys that are going to be difficult to replace as well.
I think Hawk will appreciate not having to go in and save Riley when he's running his mouth, though, as he's told us before. But it is going to be weird to not see them on the ice together.
He brought that agitator type style to the game. There's no question about it. He would get under the skin of guys, and hey, sometimes you need that. You know what I mean? And he knew how to really get under a guy's skin. And but he was a very good player as well.
I mean, it was like 60 minutes of torture. The whole game. Like, I just sat in my seat most nights laughing.
Yeah.
You could just see it.
Just a great character. Just a character.
Well, let's jump into the season recap part of this a little bit. So, Mark, I just want to kind of get your overall thoughts with this season. How do you feel about this after it's all said and done, and what you thinking?
Well, I mean, if you look back at now that the dust is settled, I mean, I'm a lot like anybody else, the players, the coaches, the fans. It's a grind, and when it comes to a halt, like it did for you guys in GR, just the finality of it, you know, there's so much promise and hope, and then all of a sudden it's over. It takes a minute to kind of catch the breath, and but if you do look back, which I have with a couple stories, if you go to ToledoBlade.com and just search for the Walleye, you'll see some of that stuff. It was a great season. I mean, we didn't know what to expect with Pat Mickish coming as the first-year coach. Some question his credentials. I'm not going to say I was fully on board with it. I also had questions, to be quite honest with you. His track record was decent. He worked. What was going for him was he worked in Green Bay in the USHL with some younger talent and knew the development part of what the Walleye were looking for. But boy, did he put together a great first year. If you look at it, I mean, they got out of the gate great. I'm pretty sure they led first place wire to wire. They did have a little hiccup in the middle. He made a couple huge trades, I thought, that maybe don't get talked about too much, bringing in Jacob Graves and Matt Anderson on the back end. And those were 2 big moves. And, he led them to the conference finals. So not bad for a rookie start. And then you look at the players, you got to start with Brandon Hawkins, guys. I know, Travis, you're well aware of. It's just a pleasure to watch him play. Oh. Every time he's on the ice, he can do just things I've never seen done. And we've had some talented, high-skilled players. Shane Burschbeck comes to mind, just can do some things with the puck that are just silly. But his shot, his hands, his vision, he scored some goals. It's like nobody else would even think about taking a shot like that. But, he wins the MVP, rightfully so, led the league in scoring and goal scored, set franchise records in all those categories. And he'll be back. He loves Toledo. What's cool about him, his story is he played a couple seasons down in Bowling Green, which is about 45 minutes from here. And he just loves the area, and he's fully in love. He's settled here. His family's going to raise his family here. So he's already committed. They haven't officially announced his signing, but I think the season starts with him, that he was the engine. And I can go on with the attendance, Travis, that over there at the Bank Tank. And it's just, again, you go to these other ECHL facilities and they're playing in front of less than 1,000 people. And you hear it night after night from the players and the coaches how much energy the fans, give to the team. So those are a couple highlights anyway.
Yeah, I've been to 2 NHL buildings in the playoffs, and I've said if you went event for event, Toledo can hold its own with the 2 buildings that I was in, and one is probably one of the top 3, being Nashville. It's an absolute party down there, and the other was Columbus, but just the atmosphere is unbelievable. And Brandon got to see it last year in a regular season game, and then he made it down for some playoff games this year, and he looked at me and was like, oh my God.
Yeah, just even the hit somebody, love it or hate it, which I always have mixed feelings on it. But can you imagine if you're just an opposing guy, not really knowing, and you're coming in for the national anthem, and all of a sudden it's the whole 8,000 people scream hit somebody. I mean, that's got to have an impact right there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the first year I came down for my first game, I didn't know about that beforehand. And I'm sitting there during the anthem and it made me jump. I was like, oh, okay, they weren't kidding. These guys are intense. And then obviously the game unfolded and the intensity goes for the whole game. And that's what I love most about Toledo is the intensity doesn't stop. Whether you're winning or losing, the fans don't give up. They just keep going and going. It's the Energizer Bunny in there, but 8,000 of them. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a knowledgeable fan base too. I mean, it's not just let's make noise. I mean, there certainly is a big segment of it, and the fans aren't perfect. We won't go down that road. There's some knuckleheads like there in every fan base, and some chants I just wish they would go away. We won't go down that road. But for the most part, they know when a ref has missed a big call. They know when to really, if the power play, they need a power play goal. They know when to, try to motivate the team. So that's another aspect of it. And, I mentioned season highlights just to go back to that, the winning streak there to, the end of the regular season and into the playoffs, 22 straight wins. And I think there's one win short of setting the all-time ECHL record of wins, which was 23. And it just didn't seem like they were ever going to lose. That's why when they did eventually fall in the conference finals, it was a little bit shake your head because it just seemed like they had everything going. They could just puck luck, whatever you wanted to call it, but they were just rolling all the way into the postseason.
Yeah, to keep a winning streak going to 22 games is one thing, but then to have 8 of those games be in the playoffs is a whole other animal. And that's what shocked me the most this season. The 18-game win streak last season during the regular season was pretty cool, but this one stands alone. This was impressive.
Yeah, to sweep. The two teams, Kalamazoo had their number to the first round opponent there during the regular season. To sweep them was unbelievable. And just again with Wheeling, it's an overtime game to start both of those series. And just like I said, it seemed like they couldn't lose. It was funny. We would ask them about it, the media here, and they were just like, we don't want to talk about it. It's that hockey guys can be about as superstitious as any group of athletes you'll ever meet. And it was like, I got to feeling bad saying, hey, what do you think? What's going right? How are you guys going to keep this going? And like, oh, we don't even talk about it. It's something that you don't want to jinx them, but it was really a really neat thing to cover.
Yeah. So moving on from that, just kind of what do you think the biggest improvement for the Toledo Walleye was this season compared to last year, I should say?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a different group again, starting with a new coach and not knowing what to think of from him, but he pretty much kept the same style that Dan Watson had used. Obviously you guys are familiar with Waddy up there, and I'd be curious before we end this to get your thoughts on what Dan did up there, because I think Waddy did an absolutely terrific job in his first year up there. Same with Pat down here. It was the question mark was what kind of team is he going to have? And like I said, he seemed to push all the right buttons. He had a leadership core that he really leaned on, and what stood out to me is they're a very young team. It's by far the youngest team. I'd have to do some more research on it, but they didn't have but one veteran Hawk, and before Graves came in, and the youth is what stood out to me. And special teams, not to dive too deep into it, but just the two assistant coaches, they're both local guys here. One, Alden Hirschfeld, you guys, he played up with GR there, and he's now running the one of the special teams units here, and Brett Bain, and those two guys did a phenomenal job. And again, just I think just the run they put together, they win the division, and again the 22-game winning streak. And there's no other way you can look at it as a successful season unless you bottom line it, and they didn't win the cup. So I would say I'd give it definitely an A grade.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think one thing that I really noticed was the resilience this year. If you look at a lot of the games early in the year, even in that rough patch, they entered the third period trailing a lot, and were losing. They were losing games, but would come back, get a point, come back, win. Sometimes they'd rattle off 3 goals in the third period, and it's just like the resilience of that team, I think, had a different feel than in past years, in my opinion. It's just something I kind of noticed this year.
Yeah, they could score goals in bunches, man. That was fun. It was contagious, man. When they get one, it was right next shift. And you're right. Yeah, that one of their bugaboos, I will say, is they would fall behind early in games, and they had to rely on that resiliency probably a little more than Pat would want. But during that streak, just prior to that, they had a bad loss down in South Carolina where they were winning in the third period and collapsed. And I guess
5 seconds left in the third period.
Yeah, that's what it was. And Pat, I think, maybe lit into him for the first time. And then they had an optional skate the next day. It was a long road trip that they were kind of just starting. And sure enough, every player on the roster showed up to that morning skate. And Pat, I know he still points to that as the turning point where this group cares. They're coming out. They didn't have to be here. They took accountability for blowing it. And ever since then, they put together, they never lost the rest of the way up until
Kansas
City series.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember watching that game, and it was just like, oh, that's a backbreaker. And then they still had to go to Atlanta. I think it was Atlanta to finish that trip out. And it was just like, okay, what are we going to get here? And I think Bednar had a shutout that game, if I'm not mistaken.
That's when they both got rolling because
it was like a switch flipped.
We haven't talked too much about Jan Bednar yet, but he had a great rookie campaign here, and both of the goaltenders, really, the whole team came together. That's what you need to, that defense started, because it was when they had the shaky part of the year, it was odd man rushes and just lapses but then it all came together. The goaltending stepped up. Both of them played. The rotation that Pat ended up going with between Letherman and Bednar turned out great. And they just put it all together. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah, I think once they kind of implemented, we need to focus more on team defense. You've seen the goaltending numbers start to come up at a pretty rapid rate for what they were for the whole season. And I thought that was a big deal. And it showed. I mean, then you win 22 games in a row, and you're not going to do that playing bad defense.
Yeah, and I mean, you hinted at it earlier, but the addition of Matt Anderson and Jacob Graves, too, I think was just a major game changer on the back end for this team. They brought a level of grit and power on the back end that I hadn't seen from this team in quite a while.
I think Anderson was the fleece of the year, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I really like his game.
Everybody careful, because there's a lot of big Cole Frazier fans around.
I get it.
I wouldn't want to ever say anything bad about Cole Frazier.
I wouldn't either. I'm just saying I thought for what he brought, I thought that was a perfect addition. And I think I look for him, if he does stay, to kind of take that next step. And then if he does, okay, now you got 2 seasons out of that trade. It's a good trade.
Absolutely. Graves too. They gave up 2 pieces there, but I'd love to see him. I just wrote about what needs to be done in the off season, and I think he should be a priority. Jacob Graves, just the experience. He's got size. He was the perfect fit. That's exactly the kind of guy they need in the defensive end.
Yeah, he was a guy that I felt really started to shut down the grittiness that Kalamazoo tried to bring in that series there with Radikop trying to be the guy that stirs things up. I know Graves definitely lost that fight to him, unfortunately, but I think that was the moment where they felt, okay, these guys aren't going to be pushed around. They've got him back there. He's scary. Let's try to play the actual game, not just push him around. And that was a major game changer.
And honestly, they need more of that. Again, I have a Sunday story coming out about what I think they need to add, and they just need more size and more experience, I think, on the back end. And that's something Dan Watts and I used to talk about all the time. I mean, it's so hard to find that type of defenseman that has both size and talent, because if you're a D-man and you have that, you're up in the
NHL.
Or in the
NHL.
Yeah, or at least the AHL for sure. So
Right.
easier said than done, but if they could have a couple Jacob Graves, that'd be a good thing going into next year.
I completely agree with that. I've even said to Brandon, and I've told Nick, I feel like if they would blend a little bit of the way the Storm played with some of the size and skill with the modern speed and skill, I think there's your blend you need. But it's just my opinion.
I agree. You're not the only one that thinks that, Travis.
That's why I'm not the head coach, though. So
it's easier said than done, and I wasn't sure what to think about Pat, but I know that he has said to me already this offseason he wants to add some more size and
it's a good thing.
So
I think a lot of people will like to hear that.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, we're at the point of the episode we got to do our sponsor obligation, so we got to send it over to DraftKings real quick, and when we come back, we'll dive a little bit more into this offseason here and wrap this thing up.
We're this close to crowning the Stanley Cup champion, and with the action heating up on the ice, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New to DraftKings? Listen up. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500. Just deposit at least $5 and you'll get a bonus bet back equal to your first bet if it doesn't hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get a no-sweat bet up to $1,500 if your first bet doesn't hit. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369. In Connecticut, help available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Will Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. cdkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
And welcome back. All right, we were already talking about it a little bit, but let's dive into it. Mark, what do you think was missing this season that kept them from getting to past that conference finals mark, at least this year?
Well, it's something we just were talking about, actually, that size. I just think they need a little more grit back there. Not to take anything away from the guys that they had, but they were young. I think he would like them. Now, the ECHL has a veteran rule where you can only have 4 guys on the roster that have played 260 or more professional games. So you're limited there. But this is the first year I can remember in quite some time where they haven't had at least 3. And I think, personally, you need a little more experience. Guys that have either won a cup or the older guy that really is winding towards the end and really wants a cup. And then the other thing is that size. And talking to Pat Mickish just a little bit briefly about this will be his first full off season to kind of compile his own roster. I don't think he was complaining about the pieces that were already here because it's the guys that we've already kind of talked about. But I think he's probably eager to put his stamp a little more on it. And he has talked about wanting to get bigger and more experience. So, and not only on the back end, but he mentioned because the Walleye is talented. They're just very small up front as well. And it's worked well for them. It's hard to argue with the results of the, win-loss record and how far they went. They're fun to watch too, right, Travis? I mean, like we talked about scoring goals in the bunches, but you also need, when it comes to the playoffs, and it gets tough, and it does. Hockey, I think, is the hardest sport to win a championship in. Just because of the grind. It's so, because I've been fortunate enough for my newspaper to send me to these playoff series on the road. And you kind of really get a good feel about, what it takes to go on the road and play road playoff hockey. It's physical. Everything's tighter. Everything's more on an edge. That's why somebody that's a little more a bigger guy, grittier guy, guys with more experience, I think would be beneficial. I think, again, it's easier said than done at this level to find guys because they're going to want that contract to play at the higher level. But what the Walleye have going for them, and maybe I'm biased, but I think there's no better place for a guy that's at this level, city to play and franchise to play for than the Toledo Walleye. The way they treat the guys, we talked about the fan support, just the desire for a cup. I mean, can I just say I was in Kansas City and I don't want to make those people mad. It's just like they don't get it. They just don't. Their last game there where they clinched it. Okay, it was Memorial Day, but they just didn't have. I don't know. It just didn't. I know if it was in Toledo, put it this way, it's just an heightened level of passion. And that's not a knock on Kansas City or any other fan base, but it's not a hockey crazy city like Toledo is. But the point is, if you're playing at this level, and I hear it from players, this is where they want to play. So Pat's got the best recruiting tool he could possibly have to bring in that type of guy.
Could you imagine Toledo on a holiday playoff game?
I mean, this would have been packed. It would have been standing room only like it always is. And can you imagine, Travis, if they ever win a championship? I've talked about it.
Jeez, I couldn't imagine.
I mean, you hear about the old school. They burned a building in downtown Toledo, back Tipke's department store. That's a story legend. Of course,
the cup went to the bar.
Yeah, but this was in the 70s when the Gold Diggers maybe been in the early 80s, but when they won, that's even before my time. But the point is, the parade would be phenomenal, and one day it's going to happen, fellas.
I think like one question I have, like you talk about veteran presence and some size, and they got Graves at the deadline. Was there anything else that was close? Like, do you know? Because I'll tell you, two players that I really, really wanted to see them go get. They were in our division. They were on a team that was not as good this year, and one of them got moved. I really wanted to see them try and get Andrusiak and Vive from Cincinnati. I thought that would have been a good blend up front with some veteran presence, but then they got Graves. I just wondered, did you hear, was there anything else close at the deadline?
I can't say specifically, Travis, but I do know that he was working the phones hard, and he did tell me that they were so close on a couple of them that just fell through at the last minute. And of course they don't divulge that kind of thing. But
right.
I know that he did try to make a couple more moves, but again, you got to give up something, and those opposing players are going to want to go after the guys that got you to where they, so you're going to have to give up something too. So maybe that was the sticking point of landing one of those big names, but they might have been that just a couple pieces away. But hindsight, I know that Pat really did work the phones and then was trying to improve his roster every day prior to the trade deadline.
I think that's a good thing that the fans, if they listen to this, will hear. Like, it's no shortage of trying, so, and a whole full off season, you've mentioned that he's come to the realization that of things that he would like to add. So I think the fans will like to hear that personally. I don't know about you, Brandon.
Yeah, I agree. Cause Mark mentioned earlier, there was a lot of question marks around Pat when he was hired. And I mean, we had him too. Everybody did. And I know he blocked out that noise and went and did his job and did a phenomenal job. So hearing that, the question marks from the fan base were trying to be answered in the back end automatically by Pat in his first year, I think should give a lot of people hope for what we're going to see out of this team in the years coming with him still at the helm. So I just still knowing the AHL level and the NHL level so well. It still blows my mind that the head coach in the ECHL is the one making these calls and doing that stuff. When I first heard that, it was just what an incredibly challenging job that is.
But what an opportunity too, Brandon. Look at Derek Lalone. I'll never forget when he first came here, and full credit to Newsy for turning this organization around. I mean, he came in, the first guy he signed was a little goalie, Jeff Lurk, out of Michigan State, and everybody's like, what is this guy doing? Because he came in very similarly from Green Bay, and people were like, who's this Derek Lalone guy? I mean, he had quite a bit of success actually there at Green Bay, but when he came in, and and Dan Watson too, when he finally took the reins, I think it's what an incredible opportunity. There's a lot of pressure there, but to be able to have full control over who you put on the ice, I mean, other than Grand Rapids and Detroit, the Red Wings have been a lot more involved with the Walleye as far as trusting them with more player development. I think we're seeing more prospects. If you look at the Cosa last year, just getting his feet wet here, I mean, they're trusting the Walleye down here to treat their top guys the right way. So, they do get some players from Grand Rapids that are provided, but for the most part, he has the full opportunity to put together the roster he thinks is going to win.
Yeah, and I do like that aspect of it too. And I think we'll still see some pieces from Grand Rapids end up in Toledo this year. I know I was talking with Travis this week, and I was like, there's so many young guys that got added to the Griffins roster near the end of the season or in the playoffs or that came up from juniors. And if they don't go back to juniors, there's a couple of them that honestly would be a great fit down there. I think of like an Emmett Finney or an Andrew Gibson coming out of junior, going straight down there. I think those could be incredible pieces for the Walleye, but the development that they'll get in that league could be monumental for their future, just like we saw with Kosa. I mean, getting to watch Kosa a full season up here in Grand Rapids, I don't know what he would look like without that year in Toledo, because I know it started off rough and then he turned it on, and the same thing kind of happened up here. But seeing how important that step was and how much development he truly did get from it, I think you're going to see a lot more teams and organizations using these ECHL teams for their prospects in the future, which is an exciting thing.
Yeah, the ECHL is, I guess people still think of it as the East Coast and the bus league. And I'm telling you what, the talent level in this league now has elevated. I mean, they're each team there. I mean, I'm not saying you have fewer forward lines and, you got 9, forwards and a 10 extra, but I mean, the level of competition is the perfect place, I think, for Kosa is a great example. He came in and he was uncertain. He was just a kid when he first came here. And I think he struggled a bit, maybe on and off the ice. But I think, again, the professionalism with the Walleye organization, I think he quickly realized that, okay, this isn't punishment. This is a place where they really think I need to be. And his game just steadily improved. And we're thrilled to see how well he did up there and having that great year and leading you guys to the division finals. And I mean, Bednar's kind of a same situation here. The kid grew up before our eyes, and just to keep him and some very similar to Kos. And by the time it was over, I could talk with him. We joke a little bit, and I felt comfortable. And I just think his game grew as well. And it's a great place for Grand Rapids. And we see Horkoff come down. We see Yuri Fisher's down here a lot in the press box, and they care and they trust. And that's a big part of being the developmental part of it. Now it goes back to Pat wanting to win and develop. And when he came in, he said it can be done. So, and I believe that it can be both develop and win a cup.
Yeah, this year, like Tumisto, he played 5 games for Toledo and absolutely tore it up, and then went to Grand Rapids. And my opinion, Brandon, I didn't see as much as you did, but he didn't really slow down.
No, he had a fantastic first pro season. Those 5 games down there, I know he was coming back from injury, and I think that was part of the reason why he got sent down there. But that was the Kickstarter for him to come up here and have a really successful first year. So you don't really miss a beat for them coming up from Toledo to Grand Rapids. There's not a lot of difference in the skill level that they have to deal with and face, which is the greatest thing ever. They're all, at that point, they're tweaking, they're fine tuning the little things to get ready for that NHL step, hopefully. So I can't thank it Toledo enough for what they've already done for this organization, because it just makes it fun to watch up and down.
Yeah, well, I was going to get how about the performance of Dan Watson up there? I know there was some, he did some special things here, never won the whole thing, but what he did up there, right? Was he pretty good fit? And you guys had a great year. And Dan Watson is, he's kind of a legend around here. So we're glad to see him continuing the success up there in GR.
Yeah, he is a legend down there, as he should be. I mean, what he's done for this organization this year, just in 1 year, took them from bottom of the division to second in the division, a playoff run, built this great coaching staff that he has behind him with Brian Lashoff and Steph Julian and the rest of the staff there. And he's brought fun back to Grand Rapids when it comes to hockey. I think he's brought that culture, that winning culture, that want to win, that I think reinvigorated a lot of these veteran players that went through really rough past couple of years in this organization. Last year was probably one of the darkest years we had as an organization, and just that turnaround to see the fans slowly buying back into. I don't think there's a single fan that's, you know, a season ticket holder in Grand Rapids that doesn't love Dan Watson and what he's done for this team. And I can only imagine what the growth in the second year for him is going to be like. So he's been a blast, and I just can't wait to see him hopefully hoist that cup up here too.
Yeah, it sounded like you guys ran into a little bit of the same trouble the Walleye did in the playoffs, where some key injuries maybe, and you know, that's tough. The Walleye were missing 3 key components at the end there. Nobody will use that as an excuse, but I think you know, the Griffins probably had a really good chance to keep going if they're healthy.
Yeah, I mean, missing Simon Edvinson for your only 3 losses in that final there,
Right.
that's a tough one to swallow there. They did the best they could with what they had, though, and I look back on it, and the season was a success for me as soon as they made the playoffs, so everything we got after was a bonus, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I thought it was only going to be a matter of time before Waddy moved up. I mean, I told my wife, I said, and I even said it last year, I was like, this might be it. Like, he's got nothing left to prove down here. He literally did as much as he could for this city and kept the culture that Lalone installed. And you see it this year in Grand Rapids, just how good of a coach he is, and the mind of how you can move up and bring with you things that worked at a different place and install them here. And it's like, it was just a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, I know the one thing really bothers him is just not winning that championship here. Because again, nobody, you know, he finished his career here in Toledo as a member of the Storm. And I think at that point realized how special it was. And every offseason towards the end, it was like, well, where's he going to go? It was just a matter of time. Like you said, Travis, and, you know, Grand Rapids is the most logical step.
I really thought that we were going to lose him to Cleveland a couple years ago.
That was definitely the big.
I was like, he lives in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, because he's from that area, or at least his wife is from that area too. But I think GR was his dream spot to kind of work his way up. And, you know, I thought maybe he might be up on the bench with Newsy, you know, up with the Wings at some point.
There's still a chance. We talked about that one episode once. I'm like, I could see it definitely happening. And
absolutely,
I don't hate that view at all. I like that a lot. So, but he needs to stay here for a little while. We need to keep him in Grand Rapids for a little while.
Selfishly for Brandon. Not to mention Brandon, or did you see him when he was in Kalamazoo? Was it you that pointed that out?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say too, is you can tell, like Mark, when he said it eats at him that he didn't win that cup, but he still cares greatly about that organization, clearly. I mean, he's still, I wouldn't say he's not as heavily involved, obviously, but when he has the opportunity to make sure he's seeing these boys play, he's there. I saw him in Kalamazoo a couple of times when we head down there and the Walleye were in town, you know, being a 40-minute drive from GR, why not? He brings one of the assistant coaches with him and they were watching the game, and that's just really cool to see that involvement still there. And, you know, he definitely made his way down to the locker room a couple times and, you know, probably shared his thoughts with Pat and whatever, but it's just cool to see the cohesiveness from Detroit all the way to Toledo between these 3 coaches.
Well, yeah, even Derek Lalone came down for a couple playoff games. I mean, that I don't know how often you're going to see an NHL come down to the ECHL affiliate, and it was one of those games. I think it was a Brandon Hawkins overtime winner, and I remember seeing him after the game. He's like, just like the old days, you know. He was same old great Derek Lalone is a. I was so thrilled when the Red Wings hired him, and I don't care what the naysayers say. He had a phenomenal first year too. You know, a couple injuries again on their part, and they're in the playoffs, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, we've heard it before too, just from people within the organization close to the Griffins. You know, there's people in Detroit that talk about Simon Edvinson right now, and they're like, if we would have had him for one more game, I think we were there. That's like how well they view him, but like how close they truly were to making it. So we're all going to hit our peak, I think, in the same year, and it's going to be a good amount of time. It's going to be a good time.
Phenomenal. All 3.
I don't think we're this podcast, like we were all like running on fumes. It felt like some nights, especially for Brandon and them, because they were reviewing Grand Rapids games after the game, and like I'm like, it seemed like every night, like typing up stuff, reading your articles, putting notes together for the podcast, and it's just like, I don't know if I could do all 3 at once. Like, this is crazy.
Oh, well, Mark, I want to know as we get close to the end here, what was your favorite moment of this season? I know this is a big one to pick from because there's so many good moments, but what was your favorite moment this year?
Well, there's again so many. I as far as on the ice, it was definitely Brandon Hawkins, the overtime goals. He scored 2 of them in the first round against Kalamazoo. I think that one was the diving goal where he shot and then got his own dove and got his own rebound, and the place goes crazy. And then he also won against Wheeling, a goal on a possible angle just from that. I don't think the goalie's still stunned that it beat him over his right by his ear, and just so fun to watch him and the games he had night after night, and all the high scoring and all that. But I go back to a Nugget Gate, Travis. To Karel Tutayev, the young Russian. You guys know Toots.
Yeah.
Just great kid, just kind of just awestruck. I don't know if he ever felt fully comfortable in America or what, just the language barrier and all that. But during a kids game, the school celebration game, about 7,000 kids there, one of the kids threw a chicken nugget onto the never seen this before. And I've covered, I can't tell you how many hockey games. And just instinctively, this is before a face-off, he just saw it and he flicked it and flipped it into the stands. And the ref called him for a penalty. They call him for an equipment violation or some crazy thing. And a misconduct penalty is what he ended up getting. And the Walleye just ran with it. They created T-shirts.
Yeah.
In fact, I think they're up for an ECHL award.
They are. And it happened like on a Wednesday, and like the Friday home game, there was already T-shirts in the swamp shop.
Well, I was trying to get to the bottom of it because I wasn't sure what the hell had happened. I really didn't get the full story until after, and somebody's like, "No, it was a hot dog. No, it was a piece of pizza." No, so I talked to my buddies who run the penalty boxes, and they confirmed that it was now they don't have chicken nuggets there. That's the other. Oh, it couldn't have been a nugget because they don't sell nuggets. They sell the strips. Whatever. Who knows? Maybe the kid brought McDonald's. Who knows? I think poor Toots might have been overwhelmed by it. That's the only thing. He ended up leaving the team. They may be totally unrelated. He just went. He wanted to go back home. But for as far as humor, that has to be Nugget Gate. That's hilarious.
Travis, what about you, man? What was your favorite moment from the season?
Oh,
that's a good one, man. That's such a good one.
Only in the ECHL, I feel like there's your old days, Mark. I honestly can't really point to one specific thing, but honestly, all the comebacks that happened early in this season, because it was like you get there, start the game. Well, we're down by 3 going into the third period. It's like, and then we're tied. It's like, I was like, don't anybody leave with how this season is going. And it felt like it was every home game we were losing and just coming back. But I will say to go off Nugget Gate, my funniest part of the year is the Kalamazoo Toledo Walleye that happened when they forgot their uniform.
Oh shit! Yeah, I felt so bad for that equipment manager. I was gonna. I don't know how you do that. They loaded up the bus and forgot the jerseys.
I was like, they came on the PA and they're like, the Kalamazoo Wings will be wearing white practice jerseys, and my buddy behind me is like, did they just say that? And I was like, yeah, they did. And then they come out, and then it was like rumored that they were there for the first period, and they weren't. They still come out, and I was like, "Oh, this is." I've never seen this.
The equipment manager's father had to go to the arena in Kalamazoo and pick up the jerseys and speed down to Toledo to drop them off. Poor guy, he's never going to live that down the rest of his life. But the other thing I would have to say is that I love the when they recognize the history. They honored the Toledo Storm teams that won Riley Cups in 93 and 94 back to back. And to see those guys and to see the city embrace them again, and they're all recognized. And a couple of them, Rick Judson had just been in an auto accident. He's back on his feet for the first time, really emotional. And the players wearing the old Storm jerseys. And maybe Travis remembers. It was Hawk, I think, that did the a celebration in honor of
the butter.
Burning the butter. Alex had this. He's a former Storm. He's a Hall of Famer now. They have the Hall of Fame ceremonies here too, and he did the tribute after he scored a goal to the old school. So that's the kind of stuff that it's just great.
I was at the first game. In the second game, I had to work 2 weeks of nights, so I missed the 9-1 night. I was like, "Oh, this isn't destined to happen." Like. And then I had to work the next Sunday too, and they put 9 on the board again. And I was just like, but yeah, the Storm night was awesome. I remember going to the sports arena as a little kid, not during that era, but towards the end of the Storm. And, with what we've got coming, it's been neat to get a little better understanding of what happened in those couple years. So it was very cool to see all them legends of Toledo hockey back.
Yeah, to see the current players embrace the old players is really neat. And I think that's when they really get the the idea of how important hockey is in Toledo.
Yeah. Those jerseys they wore were so nice. Oh my gosh. I wanted one so bad.
Actually, going back to my book, I have a section, even a chapter about the logo, the Storm logo. Hockey News used to vote that as the worst logo in all of hockey for years. And now people love it. I talked to Hawk. He's like, "You got to be kidding me. I love it. All the players love it." But it's to me, I don't think it's the best logo, but it's something about nostalgia, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, look at the reverse retro program with the NHL, right? When they did the specialty jerseys, the one-offs, it's like, they sold like crazy. It seems like what was bad in the 90s with designs is now popular again. So
all comes back around again.
It does. Well, to wrap this episode up, Mark, I wanted to get your final thoughts on who do you think was the offensive MVP for the Toledo Walleye this year? I know there's the obvious answer out there, but who do you think?
Well, it's got to be Hawk. There's no question about it. I've already talked about him and how special he is, but Riley Sawchuk, what he did in the playoffs, again, going back to him, unbelievable. Trenton Bliss is a guy that I don't think he gets enough credit. He's one of those bigger bodies, more of a power forward, who had another great year. I hope he comes back. Sam Craggs may be most improved, I guess. Mm-hmm. He went from not being an offensive contributor, more of a fourth line guy or a 10th forward guy, to being a key contributor. Sam Craggs, those guys are probably tops as far as MVPs, offensive MVPs.
Yeah, I figured you would go Hawkins, and I figured I would let Brandon have Sawchuk because of jersey reasons and Grand Rapids ties. I was gonna say Craggs. I really thought. Seemed like last year when they were playing Idaho, he was sheltered a little bit, which I get. He was coming out of college, first full year pro, mm-hmm. And I was like, man, just give him some ice time, and boy, did they give it to him this year, and he didn't look back at all. So, hopefully,
Pat put full trust in him. You're right, Travis. Dan, he played sparing minutes last year, and I talked to Pat, like, can you believe the improvement? Pat's like, well, I wasn't here last year, but he gave him full, plenty of ice time to prove himself. And he's a big body, but he really found his offensive stride too, just became a complete two-way player, I thought.
I think he's part of that core they want to try to keep.
Oh, yeah.
Craggs, Keenan, Hawkins, that's kind of your core right now, I feel like, and you can it's at this level, it's hard to keep a good core together, with opportunities overseas in the American League, just to get guys like 3 heart and soul players like that. I thought that's a big thing that Core and Craggs' development this year, I think, only helps.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the defensive side of the puck, Mark, who do you think was the defensive MVP for this team?
Well, I mean, Riley McCourt was the leading scorer. He was the catalyst again on the power play, and we've just the character guy, right? We talked about that. You could go with a couple. We talked about Matt Anderson and the guys that were acquired. Jacob Graves were big. Matty Anderson was really big offensively, but Prapavesis, the guy that's gone overseas, is another guy. He could go with any of those four, but I like Riley McCourt. I think a lot of people, when it was announced that he was gone, there was a lot of people that were upset that for a variety of reasons. But probably McCourt would be the defensive MVP.
Yeah, I said all year, I was like, the one guy I really liked was Anderson as well. But defensively, I thought Prapavesis was a really good defensive defenseman. Stay at home. He could add some offensive touch too. But I think next year, if he resigns, you're going to see Matt Anderson go nuclear. Just my opinion.
I agree. Good kid.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, Mark, I always want to say thank you for doing this with us. Like you said, it's a Friday night. I appreciate you hopping on and doing this. At the end of every episode, we have a guest. We always give them an opportunity to have the floor, tell the people where to find them, what they're working on, if they've got anything coming up. So the floor is yours, sir.
No, guys, thanks for having me again. I'm glad that you guys kind of expanded the podcast down to the walleye. I think you're reaching a fan base here that will definitely, and appreciates that. But thanks for having me, and just wrapping up some final season stories at Toledo Blade. ToledoBlade.com is the best way to find my stuff, and as it says here, at Monroe Blade on Twitter is I tweet out quite a bit, especially during games, right, Travis? I go a little crazy, but
I don't know. I think it's good content. I think I personally, the more content that I can get for this team, I think the better, because you don't get a lot of it. And there's a lot of people that this is their hockey team. So it's great to have a person
I
like
hear
you.
from more people about Twitter than anything else that, I followed that game. And so, that's the way I like to, stay involved and keep on top of the team through Twitter. So that's where this offseason at Monroe Blade.
Well, perfect. Like we said, thank you. I hope you get to enjoy some relaxing time this off season, and who knows, maybe we'll get you back on before the season starts for a little season preview before the Walleye kick things off in October. But seriously, thank you again so much, and enjoy the rest of your off season, man.
Thanks, guys. Absolutely. I'd love to do it again. Appreciate you having me.
All right, we are back. Thank you again to Mark for that. That was fun. I jokingly said to him after we were done, I was like, I think that'll be the easiest guest edit I've ever had. It's just another great hockey mind to talk to and have a good conversation with. And, like we like to do our interviews, they're not interviews. It's a conversation about hockey. And you can tell, in his years of covering Toledo sports, he has the same passion for this team that any other fan does.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny how he forgot about the jersey mix-up with Kalamazoo, and we all got a laugh again out of that.
Like, I forgot about that too. I can't believe, I thought that was like the season before.
It feels like it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just glad he brought up Nugget Gate with Tatayev. Like, that's a classic one right there. Only in the ECHL do you see that stuff.
Yeah, he puts out some incredible content for this fan base through the Blade, and I've got a subscription now just to kind of keep up to date with as much stuff as he posts, because if you don't have like a subscription, you can only read so many articles and then you get booted. So huge thank you to him for taking an hour out of his Friday night in a summer. Such a generous person. Definitely can't wait to talk to him in the future about more Toledo stuff as we work our way through the summer into next year.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And hearing that we'll be able to get him back on. We didn't screw it up that badly. So yay for us, right? So it happens when Nick leaves us unsupervised for an episode. So
we miss him though. We miss him.
We do. I hate that our big boy jobs get in the way sometimes. I've missed an episode or two. He's missed a few too. So it happens. But I'm glad that there's three of us now to do this, because without you before, it was just pure chaos if we had something like this pop up. Like I would have been doing that by myself with Mark, and that would have been just not as much fun for sure for everybody involved. Well, anything else you want to add to this episode, man, before we wrap this thing up?
Should we give some predictions for what's about to start tomorrow?
What, the Stanley Cup Finals?
Yeah.
I know what your prediction is. I know what you want.
What do I
Freaking
want?
closet Panthers fan. What do you got? What's your prediction?
This might surprise some people, but I am gonna go.
He's going Oilers? You got to flex the McDavid jersey to the YouTube viewers as well. Well done.
I want to see him get his cup. He deserves it. And the guy that ultimately deserves it the most is Nugent Hopkins. He's been there through some dark days, but all the great ones, they got that cup. You know what I mean? But in the same respect, I could have pulled out, like, I got like 7 Panthers jerseys in here because they're so cheap to get. But dude, half of mine were like $20 fines on eBay, and they're like mint. So I could see it going both ways, right? Florida, they got that feeling it's business this year. Last year it was, we got here, right? We're here, we can do it. And then they were no match. Friedman said it on 32 Thoughts today. They were just no match. So I could see it going, the other way for Florida. But something's telling me Oil and 6 on home ice in Canada.
They're going to break the Canadian streak of not winning a Stanley Cup in how many freaking years?
Would be 93, right? Montreal. Was it 93?
Yeah.
Montreal.
Yeah. Wow. It's a bold prediction, but I'm right there with you. It's Edmonton. That's my call too.
I just think them two superstars, man. McDavid's like so close, and you never know when you're going to get back.
Like, it's no offense to Florida by any means. Like, obviously, like, I'm just sick of Florida being successful in hockey. Like, it sucks that it's mainly been Tampa Bay, so the Panthers are just catching a stray here at the end of this. But like, the last 5 Eastern Conference champions in the playoffs are from Florida, which is a bonkers stat right there alone.
Yeah.
And then I'm watching the ECHL, and I'm seeing Florida be successful. I'm like, I'm done with Florida being successful. Give the cup to Edmonton. Give it to McDavid.
No tax states. Come on.
I know, dude. And it's the thing is, like, in the back of my mind, if Edmonton doesn't do it, I don't see.
Gone.
Draisaitl's gone, and at the end of his contract, if it's still not done by then, McDavid's gone. He's. How do you not, right? How do you not? But again, I'm scared.
With McDavid at the All-Star game.
That's a great picture. I'm scared for Edmonton when it comes to the goaltending side of things in comparison to Florida, because you got Bob. I mean, it's hard to bet against him.
Yeah.
But Stewart seems to have figured his life out since Pickard played games as well, and we're seeing a really consistent goaltender. What I don't like is this stupid week-long break between the last round and the final starting. This is stupid.
So I got a thought on this, and it's partially because I listened to 32 Thoughts. I think the NBA did it, which we're not going to talk about that league because it's the NBA. I don't like it. I don't like basketball. But I think for the travel, and look at last year, Florida was basically just devoured. Like they were walking zombies almost in the finals. You get that week for teams to kind of heal up minor injuries. You want the best hockey, right? And how long has it been since a cup final's gone 7 games, right? This has a recipe to go 7. But I think Oil and 6 is my prediction. But like Brandon said, I do like the Panthers. They're my second team in the league. And it's mainly because of a vacation during COVID. This is long before like a much heated rivalry with the Red Wings started. This has been a few years ago. It's really, I feel like it's flipping a coin, but it's my second favorite player, or my first favorite player in the entire league with McDavid, second favorite team. I want the greatness to get his cup.
Yeah, I think he's going to do it, man. I don't want to copy your prediction, but I do love the Oil and 6 one, but I would love to see the series go 7. I think it's just going to be a battle between two incredible teams. I think this is going to be some of the best action on ice we've watched in a little while, especially when you look at last year's final. You're like, yeah, that was Vegas kind of walked right through that, right? So
I think one thing I heard, just one final thought that I have here on 32 Thoughts again, they were talking to Matthias Ekholm at some point during the playoffs, and he's even said, like, in 2017 when Nashville was down 2-0 in that series, it felt like they did get it even, but they weren't there. It was just like they were in it, but they weren't. And I think whoever wins tomorrow night, when they play Monday night, whoever loses that game, and Friedman even said it, they're going to come out like a ball of fire. So these first two games are going to be crazy. And, 20,000 fans, you're going to be right at about 20,000 because Florida's building is massive. So, and it's going to be interesting to say how much orange is in that building, orange and blue.
That will be really interesting. I think there'll be quite a bit, but
home ice is going to be a big factor with how far away the mileage is. It's the biggest gap in North American sports history. It's like 2,500 miles or something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know. I could be wrong. It's
going to be an incredible hockey to watch. All the finals in all three major men's hockey leagues are becoming just these incredible series to watch. I mean, the Florida-Kansas City one, I don't think Florida is going to continue to walk away with that one in the ECHL. We don't know what the AHL one will be. Both
Cleveland, we do. Yes, we do.
Cleveland and Milwaukee got their wins last night to stay alive. I know we know what it'll be, but at the same time, you don't know. You can never count Cleveland out, unfortunately. We experienced it all season long as Griffins fans. And at the same time, we know it as well, too. You can't count out Milwaukee just going on a tear. They won 19 straight in the regular season for a reason. Granted, they didn't play Coachella back to back. So I don't know. The games have been a blast to watch at that level. They're fun at the ECHL level, and this Stanley Cup final is going to be just all time. I mean, the playoffs this year are already the most viewed we've had, I think, in history. So I only assume that this finals is going to be just absolutely insane.
One thing that's sad is you get the greatest player on the planet, and no talk shows have covered the Stanley Cup finals.
Because ESPN is trash, but
it just doesn't make sense. Like, you literally have the golden goose in the NHL right now. Like, he's the guy, head and shoulders above, I think, everybody. I think he's the best player on the planet. And you're not taking advantage of this.
He's also like the worst interview on this face of the earth.
Well, I mean, just like, just to talk about it. Like, this is where this league drives me crazy with their marketing. It's just whatever.
Yep. I mean, yeah, we won't get into that. I could go on. This will become an hour and 30-minute episode. It doesn't need to be. With that, though, I think it's a good place to wrap.
Yeah.
Go Oilers.
But, hey, I can't be mad either way.
Right, exactly. That's why you did that. You'll be happy either way. I see now. Just trying to find some happiness in hockey, right? Oh, God. Well, folks, I think that is a good place to wrap this one up. Thank you again to Mark for hopping on this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Got to shout out our sponsors. Make sure you head over to everythinghockey.com. Use code WEST to save $3 off your order. Thank you to DraftKings as well. Make sure you're using code THPN when you're betting with them. And, of course, as always, thank you to the Hockey Podcast Network for being fantastic partners. If you made it this far, just a heads up, the next episodes you might hear that cover the Walleye are going to include some interviews. I know who they are. I just don't know what order they'll come out, so I can't spoil that completely. But definitely stay tuned because they are player interviews. It's not media. It's not fans. We are doing some player interviews that Travis and I are super excited to get done. So pay attention for those coming up soon. But everyone else, until we talk then, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Go Griffins. Go Walleye.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Hockeytown West Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at HockeytownWPod and your host, Nick at GR Hockey Guy and Brandon at BrandonGR Hockey.